Welcome, Eric. Glad you're here today. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. It's really good to be here.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about shamanic astrology, and I was really curious to know, what shamanic astrology is and how is that different from regular astrology? Can we just kind of just burst the bubble right there and start off with that?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a great question. It's a question I get with a lot of people that I meet, especially when I'm doing holistic fairs and here in the Western U.S. So the major differences is number one, the philosophical. There's major philosophical differences between regular astrology and shamanic astrology, and one of the big ones is that it operates from a holistic perspective. So that means that there's no good or bad signs or good or bad planets, or that planets or one planet is better than another planet, or one sign is better than another, and so forth. So it's all like everything has a light and shadow to it. And shamanic astrology honors the totality of who we are, including the light and the shadow. The other difference is that there's a focus upon, in shamanic astrology, a focus upon the three worlds concept: the underworld, with a world where we go through transformation, death, rebirth, facing our fears; the middle world, the world of our reality, our complexity of what we're having to deal with, form and function; and then the celestial world, the world of spirituality, of the heavens and the stars. So those three worlds are strongly emphasized in shamanic astrology, particularly as it is associated with planetary initiations and think complexes within our own chart and in our own lives. And then the other part of the major difference is that it's the planets are looked at as guides, as teachers, spirit guides, teachers, and initiators for us. So it is not so much about, I mean, there is a focus. You could generate an astrology chart just like every other type of astrology, but it's in the way it's interpreted that's different.
Mhm.
So there's some, we'll call them planetary cycles, astrology cycles, that are looked at more experientially rather than just, by mathematics. So there's mathematics involved in it, but there's a much more experiential quality to them in varying ways. I'll just leave it at that. But um, in ancient times, the shamans would look to the sky, the planets and the stars, as one of the areas where they would get knowledge too. So that relates to part of the reason why it's called shamanic astrology.
Okay, great. And then what are some of the benefits of a person coming to you and having a chart done, an astrological chart done?
They can better understand their gifts, their skills, their talents, where they've been, uh, symbols of sort of what the soul's intent is in this lifetime. We can loosely call it life purpose or even destiny. There's a lot of variables there, but there's nothing deterministic about shamanic astrology, and so that it honors the free will, it honors our choice in the matter. And so they can benefit from learning that within themselves and learning to honor their own path, and understanding what would work, say, in a more physical realm, their career or their calling in life or their spiritual path or maybe even their relationship path. So they would benefit quite a lot from all of these different things.
Kind of rudimentary, but it almost sounds like a playbook for yourself, so that you could follow. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be, the chart is a reflection of our soul's intent, and we can think of it as almost like a roadmap for us. Yeah.
Yeah,
Playbook is a
interesting.
good word for that. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, because you could change it pretty much if you want to.
Right.
uh, yeah, I like the idea of it not having any good or bad or negative or positive aspects to it, because those are just labels and just energetic qualities. And really, if you can just balance that and be in the middle, then that's usually where, at least I find, where you gain the most information, and there's more peace and tranquility in that part of it, because you understand both sides.
Yes.
Great. So, okay. So, if the if the charts, I've always thought this question, if the charts are based on where the planets are at the exact time of your birth, um, does any of the information that's collected at that time that you do the chart, does that ever change? Like if I have a chart done, say with you today, and then 3 years from now, I have another chart done, is it going to be the same, or does it relatively change? If so, how?
So yes and no would be
Okay.
the answer to that. Well, number one, when we are born, when we take our first breath, uh, at that moment when we come out of the womb, we breathe in the universe at that moment. We are exposed as a individual being at that point. And we breathe in the universe, we breathe in where the orientation of the planets and the stars are at that moment. Um, and that never changes. So we have that moment. It's like a imprint within us, and that we live with through the rest of our lives. And then how things can change is that, of course, the universe is always in motion. There is nothing that is ever static, not even down to the quantum physics of things. Everything is in motion. So the planets are orbiting, the moon is orbiting the Earth, the sun is orbiting the center of the galaxy. So everything is in motion. So when you have a chart done one day, I also look at, beyond just interpreting your natal chart, I look at like what else is going on. Like after you're born, with the planets orbiting and they're passing over things that were where other planets were. Maybe they're in conjunction or square opposition. These are some technical terms, but essentially they are in relationship with other planets. And when that happens, then there can be an initiation or a cycle that we experience in our lives. And so, like, if you did one today, I'd be looking at where the planets are today as it relates to where you were when you were born.
Mm.
And then I would look 3 years from now, they would move 3 more years. So the sun would go across the sky 3 more times, from standing on the earth, you would see it, 3 more full annual solar years. Mercury and all the other planets would be orbiting too. So we would look at what's going on from that point as well. So the yes part, things are in motion. The no part, that we also have our own birth chart that we're born into, that is, emblematic, or, it's an imprint of us and our soul's, desire for its life purpose.
This almost sounds like, and I don't want to discount anything at all, but it sounds like my putting in my GPS in my car of someplace that I want to go, and all of the choices that I have in that route, uh, and choosing. Can you explain a little bit more about initiations? What that means when you're talking about initiations?
Right. So an initiation would be something along the lines like, for example, um, let's say you are in a particular moment in time and a planet happens to be passing over one of your natal points. So, for example, let's say someone was born with the sun in Pisces, and Saturn currently right now is in the sign of Pisces. So Saturn passes over and gets close to that natal sun position. You, at that point, you enter into an initiation, a Saturnian initiation. So Saturn is initiating the person, the individual, through its qualities, what it can teach, what it can share. And in Saturn's case, the mantra for Saturn is growth through limits and boundaries. And it's looking at a kind of a hard look at your life, and trying to make choices, informed choices that help honor your own soul's path. And sometimes with Saturn, you have to jump through a lot of hoops. There's a lot of like red tape, if you will, to go through a Saturn initiation. And it can sometimes be frustrating, but it helps us ground into a stronger foundation of ourselves as we become initiated into Saturn's methodologies. So that's an initiation by itself. And other planets do that too, such as Uranus. We can have Mars, Venus, or Mercury cycles depending on our age. So our age can matter too. Like there's some cycles that happen to everyone around a certain age. And there's some that are more what we call personal cycles that are wholly dependent upon like the day that we were born and like where the planets might be at that point. And so like if you're getting a Saturn cycle at that point, there would only be like a really select number of people that would get that at that time because, or if, someone with a Pisces sun, only within a few days of that would actually experience that. But if you were born a year, 2 years later, in a different time of year, then they would get it at different times. So each cycle itself, astrological cycle, is an initiation. So when I do readings or teachings, I share, okay, this person's in this cycle. So cycle is really interchangeable in my own mind to the word initiation. So each one's going to have their own preference of what word they use, but in life we are initiated into ourselves so we can experience things. And if we're in like relationship or if we're entering a new educational time in our life, that's by itself, that can be considered initiation. But there's probably some planets involved in that help the person. Each of the planets are there to guide us, to teach us, and initiate us into our lives. They're not there to like, oh, well, Saturn's in your life, so you're going to have a hard time. So, it's just there to give you a lot of flack, and negative space. But that's not,
Like,
yeah, planets aren't necessarily have these personalities that say, that they don't like us or something like that. It's like saying like God, if you will, says, "Oh, we're all horrible people, and we need to suffer or whatever." That's not my philosophical
mhm.
experience with that with the universe. I don't think that there is a um, necessarily a bias with the planets. If you think of it, another thing, if you think of like in regular shamanism, you can think of like spirit animals like coyote or bear or spider and they can be spirit guides for us. So in the same way, planets can be that too, and they can initiate us through their cycles. So if we happen to be in a Saturn cycle or a Jupiter cycle, that's the guide that we're looking toward at that moment in time. Maybe for a year, maybe for a 6 month period, whatever it may be. We're looking toward that for guidance, for understanding, for wisdom, and to help orient us toward our life goals.
Mm. So, what do you think would be kind of the most basic understanding of shamanic astrology that a layperson could use? For instance, in because you mentioned the planets, so in looking at each of the planets and kind of understand what each one teaches or helps us to understand, and then not only that, but you also mentioned like having your sun in Pisces, I think you said. So, which what things would be really beneficial for people to know that they could at least see it and use it as a guidepost in their everyday
So,
life?
okay, so you're saying like in layman's terms, what is shamanic astrology? So, like, it's a it's a language about our relationship to the earth and sky to help us thrive in our lives. So when it comes down to it, that's what it is. Um, it's some look at astrology as a predictive tool. Some astrologers kind of work on that level. I always think of the relationship with our relationship, our personal relationship, and even on a humanities relationship with the earth and sky from a philosophical and spiritual level and psychological level. All of those are, and it works. It's a symbolic language, so it operates, differently. It's not. I don't look at astrology or even shamanic astrology as quote as science, at least not from the modern definition of it. A science in a way they understood it as ancient peoples. So it's a powerful ancient tool that can help us understand where we are going in our life, to understand the flow, to kind of look at the timing of things, to know maybe when to act upon something or when to lay low or just simply explore and educate ourselves, or maybe to look for, a potential partner in our life, an opportunity to do a wide variety of life's, choices. So that's how I would define it, like in a real basic level. No one like people that come to me for readings, I'm not necessarily there to teach them the language, although in my own, like, how I approach astrology, how I approach giving readings, there is a little bit of that teaching quality that comes through.
Mhm,
So I like to give people some definitions of what these things are. And some people can be overwhelmed by it. Some people are, my job is to translate the language into a basic format so any person may be able to understand. Of course, this makes an assumption that that person has enough knowledge that understands, okay, what are planets? What is Jupiter? What is the moon? What is the sun? Not astrologically, but just in general.
mhm,
Like, do they know that I make an assumption that they know these things? Um, and I and if I haven't yet encountered a person really that doesn't know it, they might not know like the order of the planets, or they haven't really like gotten into the science of it all. That's okay. It's not necessary to that. It's more for me to give them, the main bullet points, the translation, and they don't necessarily need to know the why behind it, but a lot of people are curious as to why these
mhm.
things are in that way. So I
Yeah,
hope
I
that
found,
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, it did. It did very much so. Thank you. I've, I kind of recognized what you were saying in comparison to me being as a therapist, because when people come, I could speak to them about their bodies, the structure of their bodies, their organs, in such a way is medical terminology that they might not understand. But if I can break it down and give them that information, and then it in a way that they can understand it, and then they can process it, and then it makes sense to them. I know a lot of people come from a physician and they're overwhelmed because the physician didn't sit and break it down to them. So they have this diagnosis, they have this label, and they have no idea where it came from, how it's there, or what it does, and how it affects them, which is really sad. So
Right.
yeah, and I know, fortunately, um, people just look up their astrological signs in the newspaper or magazines. I don't know, maybe even comic books, and look at their signs, and it seems like everybody knows their signs and who they're compatible with, and then they look at that daily uh, explanation of what's going on that day, and to me, it's like that's just too general. That fits across the board. It's not really relative to you. So this is more specific to the person and how they're experiencing their life. I like that, and
Yeah,
experience.
if I could just comment briefly
Sure.
about what you were sharing, because I mean I could do a whole 20-minute dialogue about the history of that astrology, but uh what you're talking about is called sun sign astrology,
Mm,
and it came about it started to get some notice in the 1800s, but in the early 20th century, there was a newspaper in Britain that hired an astrologer to do like I think it was called the Sunday Express weekly
mm,
reports in the 1930s, and they did that, and a lot of people, gobbled that up based on the sun sign. So they didn't look at anybody's placement of their moon or their Venus or their rising sign, whatever it may be. They just
Mhm.
focus on sun. And there's a practical reason for that in a sense, because if you just take a block of 30 days and you generally, like, it can vary from year to year, but generally it's known when the sun moves into a certain sign, and so when you have that, and most people, the majority of people, the 99 point almost 100% know their actual birth date. And so, but most people, well, at that time, most people didn't really know their birth time. That wasn't really until much later. So, but the astrology I deal with is not sun sign. It is actually the entirety, the totality of the chart, which a lot of astrologers tend to use. But there are some that work just with the sun. So it's more of a general look at that. And the sun itself in shamanic astrology represents symbolically the fuel that we burn to reach life purpose. So if we think of our chart as a vehicle, and the sun is something we kind of plug into, is like, okay, this is our energy. So we need to have that. We need to express that sign, be it Sagittarius or Pisces or Leo, whatever it may be. It's something that's a part of us, but it's usually not the number one thing that we are, but it plays a significant role. And there's a lot of complexes or things within the chart, within the being, that is much more complex than just somebody's sun sign, but it can give some basic indication. But to interpret that, let's say if someone's got a sun sign in Sagittarius and they're like, well, on this day, it's a good day to go plan for a trip. So does that mean 1/12 of the population on the planet is going to do that? Or it's a good day to go and stay at home, so they're all going to stay at home? I mean, to me, it's just very, very general, and I I wish that that would be done a little differently, but I'm just a voice, so
Mhm.
I'm not out there trying to sell newspapers or
Mhm.
doing sun sign Facebook posts. I have a I've been over these last several years posting a lot on Facebook with various different astrological happenings
Mhm.
and giving people what's up, a indication of what's up in the
Mhm.
world of astrology. So,
Mhm.
I hope more and more do that and kind of give a lot more insights into astrology
Mhm.
than just, it's more of like an education of the population, if you
Mhm.
will,
Yeah.
and just saying, hey, but in ancient times, in the Greeks, for example, they looked at the rising sign and they looked at the moon sign more than they looked at the sun sign.
Mhm.
So that was something that really, caught their attention. We tend to have, like, the moon sign tends to be really like strong in our field in general, not necessarily stronger than the sun, although at times it can be, depending on each individual.
Yeah. It reminds me also of tarot readers online that will do general tarot readings um, for like a specific sign, like for Leo or for Gemini. And it's
Oh,
like you just reminded me of all, if that's the case, then all the Gemini or all the Sagittarius people are going to be on the same flight together.
yeah, they're all going to be
Yeah.
occupying the same
Yeah.
flight. That's funny.
Yeah. It's crazy to think that. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it behoove you to have a personal reading, personal, because you get the most benefit out of that. Um,
Yeah, you get it definitely, like, you can do like reports online, but there's a lot of canned pre-written information in there. But
mhm,
if you actually connect with a individual, it could be
mhm,
online, but an individual astrologer such as me or another, you can get a much more personalized understanding of what's going on for you. Depending on, there's many different types of astrology and different types of astrologers out there. So I would always recommend, if a person's really much more curious and wants to know, is to connect with an actual astrologer out there. be
Mhm.
it me or someone else.
Yeah, yeah. I also know a lot of people will talk about Mercury in retrograde. That seems to be, this buzzword, buzz phrase that comes out. And then I found out that Mercury, or not Mercury, but the retrograde happens in all the planets. So it's not just Mercury. So fascinating how people just kind of glom on to one thing and not realize that there's more than that. But we're beginning to wake up. We're beginning to evolve in that direction. So, and that's why one of the reasons why I'm really glad you're on to kind of work through all of those blocks and help people to understand a little bit better. Question.
Hmm.
If someone doesn't know their birth time, how does that work? I mean, what about their chart? What happens if they don't know their exact time of birth?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's different ways to approach it. There's a technique that astrologers can use called rectification, which can be sometimes, excuse me, sometimes quite involved. And an astrologer would need to know like major events in a person's life, and in order to kind of zero in or hone in on a person's potential birth time. Some In most cases, I can ask, oh, well, do you happen to know if you were born in the morning or in the afternoon or the evening? So a person might go, well, I think I was born sometime in the, you know, early morning hours after sunrise or something. And that can kind of give you a little bit of a additional insight because it could pinpoint like one of maybe two or three different rising signs. So if you don't have the birth time, you won't know your actual rising sign, aka ascendant, and that's okay. Now, if a person doesn't even know like any part of the day, then what I do as an astrologer, I look at their Jupiter position, I look at their North Node position, which are two positions in the chart that help me understand a person's life purpose and their future. But you can still give a pretty darn thorough reading without the birth time. So I can still do it. I've done it actually on many occasions. Now, sometimes on some days, like every 2.5 days or so, the moon will change signs. And so a person might be born on a day that part of the day the moon goes from Leo to Virgo, for example. And that isn't too hard to deal with because since the moon has such strong influence in a person's life, I could narrow that down with some questions, asking the client or the person receiving the reading, going, okay, if do you have a life that, you were considered like strongly creative, where there's this like, like people were kind of glomming on to you. There was like an extroverted energy in you, or was it more introverted? Were you more detail oriented? Were you more analytical? Did you have a certain sense of wanting to kind of tap into the sacred in your life more so than wanting your creative energy to kind of run loose around the world? So very different archetypes, Leo and Virgo, for example. So, in fact, that's just it's like a bridge to a one point I'll make is that two signs that are right next to each other have virtually nothing in common, which is interesting. This is not necessarily always the case. Some have a little bit, and there's always going to be, if an astrologer looks deeply, you can always find some kind of a bridge between one sign and then the next sign after that. But not having the birth time is okay. That is something I can totally work with. And, if they happen to have a copy of their birth certificate, I always say, hey, go check if you've got
Mhm.
that. If your mom is still alive, you might want to ask her. And if she doesn't know, that's okay too, or your dad, or, it could be, or one for me, um, about 20 years ago, I, uh, had to send for a copy of
Mhm.
my birth certificate.
Mhm.
And my mom had always told me a certain time I was born. And so when I got the copy of the birth certificate in order to apply for a passport, I was born an hour and 15 minutes later.
Mm,
So I called my mom and say, "Hey, what's going on here?" And she goes, "Oh, I got you confused with your sister." So that can happen too. I'm one of three kids, two sisters,
mm,
being the middle child. And so that was interesting. And it actually made more sense. It gave me a different rising sign. And I felt I was resistant at first, but then I realized like, hey, this makes more sense to me and
mm,
my own path. And so I kind of went with that and understood it. And when I had a cycle that happened to connect into that, I'm Capricorn rising, it actually made sense. There were things that I was feeling, I was experiencing. So I'm like, I'm definitely Capricorn rising here in that degree area, you know, because there's 30 degrees in each sign, 360 degrees in the zodiac. Um, so your rising sign or planet can fall within anywhere from that 30-degree range. But like you, Donna, I know you don't know your birth time. And
Oh,
so
I do.
that's,
I
oh, you
do.
do. Oh, that's
I
right.
do. When I sat with you, I didn't
Ah,
wasn't sure. It was
that's,
one something I said in the morning, but
oh,
I went home and
right.
looked at it, and then that's when I sent you an email and said, "Oh, I found it." Yeah, like
Right. Now
you.
I'm remembering. Thank
Yeah,
you.
like you, my original when I went to go get a passport, the only birth certificate that I ever had was from the hospital. So it listed my mother and father's name, the hospital, my full name, and the date I was born, and that basically was it. And then I
Mm-hmm.
had to send away for it, which they considered it the long form.
Yes.
And then when it came back, then I knew, how old my parents were when I was born, and all the other details in there, as well as the time of birth, which was interesting. So I just had to come home and look it up. Not many people ask you that. What time were you born? It's usually your birthday, your social security number, or
Right.
blood type. They don't usually ask, what time you were born. It doesn't seem to be important to people.
Yeah, it's usually only
Yeah,
astrologers that are
yeah.
interested in that.
Yeah. And this came up in conversation because I had asked a nurse. I said, "What happens, if the baby's born and they're busy doing other things? What if they don't write the exact time down, kind of thing?" And they go, "Oh, what time was that? Was it, 1:30? Was it 1:27? Which one was it?" And she assured me that it's one of the things that they learn. Time of birth and time of death have to be exact. Somebody will definitely say, I forget the terminology she used, but definitely they're taught this. So I felt better knowing that at least, okay, it's not, they're paying attention, so we don't have to worry about getting it wrong.
Right, right. That makes sense. Although I have
It
heard
could
of some
happen.
people getting their birth certificates and it doesn't have the birth time on it. So
Wow.
there have been some instances that people have come to me and like 90, I would say 98, 99% of the readings I do are people that have their time. And
Hmm.
I've done probably a couple thousand readings over the years. Um, and so that would be what, just not too many. That would be what, 20 people.
Hmm.
I mean, but I do a lot more readings at fairs in like a shorter span of time, like over a weekend. I can do anywhere from, a few readings, five or six, to like close to 30 readings
Wow.
and then there's usually like one or two in there that don't have their birth time.
Hmm.
And so I give them some basic info. And then later, uh, they sometimes come to me and I got my birth certificate and this is my time. How much does it change? You want to do a full reading? And
Hmm.
I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And you can get some additional details here.
Yeah. I think I was only, if I wasn't right on, I think I was a couple minutes off. So, um, one of the common questions that I get, or concerns, when people come to me is, what is my purpose? Or why am I here? What am I supposed to do? So I know you touched on kind of career a little bit, and work and that. So when people come to you and ask, what's my purpose? What kind of answers can you give them based on their chart? How to define that for me?
if they come to me and ask me
Yeah,
what's
what's my
my,
purpose? Yeah, what's my purpose in this life?
so this would be, I would receive their information, their birth information, and then I would look at their chart and I could give them some indication, some like what I call a soul's intent.
Hmm.
So it doesn't say, like, for example, I won't say, well, you're meant to be a lawyer, or you're meant to be a sports star, or you're meant to be just a kind of a work in the household, or a farmer or something like
Hmm.
that. That's
Hmm.
not, it wouldn't be purpose in a sense of like, I'm going to tell you what job you're supposed to have,
Hmm.
but it's more of showing looking at the signs which relate to the in psychotherapy. There's a school of thought from Carl Jung. You probably have heard of him.
Hmm.
Um, and he was the one who brought forth, he didn't actually invent the word, but he brought it forth into the modern age, the word archetype.
Hmm.
And so the signs are looked at as archetypes.
Hmm.
And so when I look at a person's archetypes, like particularly their rising sign, and their Jupiter, their north node, their midheaven, those would give me powerful indications of their life purpose. So I'd be able to give them a lot of great information that relates to life purpose, and symbolically speaking, and where they're going to get their rewards in life. So rewards, not just necessarily financial, but
Hmm.
soul rewards we're talking
Hmm.
about here, and that relates to life purpose.
Hmm.
And so, you know, uh, I can see other kinds of indications, like there could be certain planetary aspects that show up on a chart that give me some indications like, oh yeah, this person also happens to be in this lifetime. If they went out on a limb, they could be a healer of some kind, or they could be somebody that is really going to get involved with a lot of people and bringing circles together, and help kind of move the energy or run the energy more. Or they're going to be great working with people, or they'd be great doing like behind the scenes work, but yet kind of developing systems and structures behind the scenes, like managing people and that kind of thing. So
Hmm.
there are like generalities there, but then there's specifics when you start getting into like really specific points within the chart, because the houses play a role, the astrological houses and the signs in the houses. So there, all these different areas are going to show where a person can really thrive, but then it can also show where blocks may be in place, so that even though their purpose might involve being a healer of some kind, maybe involving getting out there and doing talks and, spreading the love kind of a thing, there may be some blocks that and fears that show up that, prevent them from really getting out there, and maybe they're too afraid because of something going on the chart, even though the soul's intent is to really get out there. So uh, like for me, I'll give you a great, I'm a perfect example of this. And uh, I was, you know, as a kid, as a teenager, even in my 20s, I was deathly afraid of actually speaking in front of a lot of people. And the thought of like being a teacher or anything along those lines just like was not going to ever happen for me. At least that's what I thought. And then when I really got into, I did take some public speaking trainings, and I was trying to improve that, building my confidence. But as a Capricorn rising, one of the expressions of that is to be learning about being a teacher in this world and manager, somebody who comes in and shares your expertise and knowledge with others, in order to help, like, bring the knowledge to them so that it can be long lasting. It can be strong foundation. But later, when I got into astrology, in order for me to really have an astrology business of any kind, I had to actually talk in front of people. I couldn't just, play with numbers and send emails and write stuff. I actually
Hmm.
had to get out there. And it was very difficult at first, but once I got on stage and did talks and did online webinars, I was it took some years, but I got there, and I was totally fine. Though, so the universe was saying, do your Capricorn thing. This is where your rewards are going to come from, and not the only place, but some rewards. And if I step into that space, on a soul level, I'll start to like feel like I'm in the current of the universe, like, in alignment
Mm-hmm.
with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how that can really help. That's a great example of that. And for example, another example is a client I've been working with. He's a Virgo rising, and uh, one of the key words of Virgo is sacredness. And so when he first heard that word, he thought it had to do with religion and
Mm-hmm.
Christianity and, some other things. And so he kind of like, he didn't understand why I would be saying that. And then once I started going into it and going explaining what this meant, that it's not necessarily have anything to do with religion. Religion can take it for their own purposes, but he started doing things in his life that were more sacred to him. Virgo is an earth sign, so it does definitely relates to the earth and the land, and doing things that are sacred to you, sacred being important, say things that you would care for with TLC, things that you would have a certain kind of loose reverence for, but not necessarily a worship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he started getting into that in himself and his household, with his marriage, with his dog, and things started being put together for him, and it
Mm-hmm.
really brought more joy into his life,
Mm-hmm.
more excitement. So I that's another example of things coming into clarity for him, but that's happens with, like, that I work with a lot of clients, but not everything is necessarily that simple. There can be a lot of like different steps we've got to take, and it can sometimes take years to get
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Hmm.
Um, Last question. Sometimes people are really concerned, and I think sometimes it's like people will do this because it helps them accept where they're at, accept their challenges. But people will talk about past life. Oh, it has to be something that was in my past life, because they have no connection with it in this lifetime. And so they think it's, if I push it off here in the past life, then I don't necessarily have to look at it as much. Um, can you see in the chart anything past life that's gone on that's affecting or influencing the present chart?
Yes,
Wow. Can
very
you give
much
me?
so.
Wow. Wow.
So for example, there are indicators on a natal chart, and it can vary like with different astrology systems. But like one of the universal ones is the south lunar node. So there are two lunar nodes. One is south or descending, one is north or ascending. And they essentially, a simple way of saying it is they control the eclipses. So the eclipses that we see, we experience about every 6 months in different parts of the world. So the south node relates to past lives, kind of karma
Mm.
that we're dealing with in our current life. And it is something we do, all of us on some level, different ways have to work on. And then also the moon itself also deals with what we call ancestry and lineage, and to some degree our parents, especially our mother. So our in our early life, our old story. So it can be related to like the old tribe that we come from, the old way that we were, and that in this lifetime we're trying to work on something new, which relates to most of the rest of the chart, particularly the ascendant, but the sun and the Venus, Mars, Mercury positions play very significant roles too. So yes, we can look at that, and a person can get stuck at sometimes with an old pattern. And that old pattern can be just in this life, but it can also relate to the past life. There was an example in my own life where I was in a transit or initiation that had to do with my South Node. And I was in the process, I was involved of experiencing respiratory issues. This is long before COVID. many years before COVID. This was between 2012 and 2015. And it was very difficult. I was having a lot of trouble, like sometimes even almost to the point of like bronchial infections and things like that. It really did a number on my throat, even a strep throat, thrown in there. And that's what really, after that strep throat, I went to a hypnotherapist, and she did a session for me, and the intent was to kind of pinpoint if there's something going on in this life that is being impacted from the previous life. And I found that there was a past life where I had some kind of very significant infection that I died from,
Mm,
and the respiratory infection. And I think I didn't really get the clear about what year it was, but it was sometime in like the mid to late 1800s somewhere in Europe. So that gave me a lot of clues. And at that time, and I have different things that represent this, but my throat chakra was definitely something that was also coming up and really speaking my truth in my voice. And so for that area of my body to be targeted so strongly over a period of several years or 3 years, um, really caught my attention. And so it said something was energetically imbalanced, and the South Node was giving me some clues as to
mm,
that. And so I was able to work with that more strongly, more, like with greater intent. And it's always a work in progress, but I've made a lot
mhm,
of progress just from it, and been able to step into my space and speak my truth when necessary. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't, like we all do, we sometimes get rewound back into an old pattern sometimes, but for the most part I could recognize what that is and go, okay, oh, that's going on, so let me
mhm,
step into that space and work with it. So yeah, that's an example of that, excuse me, happening
mhm,
for past lives. So past lives definitely can impact us in our current life.
mhm,
But I look to uh, there is the story in Plato's Republic about the soldier who, quote, died or was knocked unconscious, and he was given a sneak peek at what went on behind the scenes. And so he got to experience what it was like, and how the lots were chosen, and how at the end of that, then he goes into this wasteland, and they have to drink from the river of forgetfulness.
mhm,
And you're not allowed to, they say don't drink too much or don't drink too little, because if you drink too little, then you still remember your past lives too much, and it can overwhelm the current
mhm,
life that you're heading into.
mhm,
If you drink too much, then you could like have almost nothing coming into this life. So you want to have that sort of that sweet spot in there if you can, according to like that myth. So I do believe that we definitely have. I've not only that example, but I've had other regressions through shamanic means and
mhm,
psychic means. That definitely confirms for me that we are souls traveling through what we call linear time, but it's just that's just a kind of a physical level construct.
mhm,
And we do have past lives, and we also have future. So
mhm,
there are things that relate to our future as well.
mhm. Yeah. And quite possibly parallel lives as well too. So,
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that.
yeah.
That's something that like trying to explore all of the different avenues here is,
Mhm.
I do believe, parallel lives, parallel universes, that kind of thing. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And and the same is true, to not dig too much into the past, but you use it as a tool to help you to move forward. But
Yes.
we're here. We're here right now in this present moment. So it's really the present moment, the now, that we really should be focused on. Yeah.
Right. And there are times where we can heal our past lives. We can heal our ancestry.
Hmm.
There are things that we can do to work with that, or
Yeah.
and that can be of one of our, could even be one of the bullet points of our life purpose. that
Mhm.
that could even be something that shows up strongly and says, okay, this is at least for a certain amount of time, you're gonna, you can work on this and this will help unchain you from the past.
Yeah, yeah. I know clearly that one of the things that I came in to do was to heal my genealogical line. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I can see the difference in my children, and as my grandchildren are getting older, I can see the difference that it has affected them in a positive way. So
Mm,
yeah, it is quite possible. Yes,
beautiful.
I'm living proof.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thanks. Well, I want to thank you for kind of coming on today and sharing such great knowledge and wisdom. And I hope that every listener that tunes in gets something out of it, and a bigger understanding, more in-depth understanding of how this can really help them in their everyday lives and in many, many facets: career, relationships, location of maybe possibly. I know I've had a lot of people lately that have asked me, I'm thinking of moving, and it wasn't just moving like, across town. It was actually moving to a different state, different locale, from Midwest to Pacific, or vice versa. So I'm looking at those when you're saying it's like almost like it's a transition period, and it's a good thing to check in and see where you're at and see where you're going, and how you can make the
Yeah.
money. And thank you for that. I appreciate it.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
There's a thing called like astrocartography, and I can look at like
oh,
maps and things that
nice.
help a person astrologically choose a place that may be more in alignment with who they are.
Nice. I like that. I
Yeah.
like that. Okay. Great. Good. That would be that to me, that would really be a benefit. But I like where I'm at, so I don't plan on moving.
Oh, good.
Um,
Okay.
no. Okay, great. So let's do this again, and then we can pick different topics. And are you open to having like someone on? We call them sitters in my practice group, of coming on and actually they can have a question, and we both can help them through their own challenges.
I would love that. Yes.
Okay, great, great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that and see how we can manifest that and make it happen. And then I'll share it with the viewers. Sound good?
Sounds perfect.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and effort, and I look forward to doing it again.
Yes. Me
All
too.
right,
Me too, Donna.
great.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
All right, thank you.